Hey Rockstars, I'm JB, expert salesperson and master presenter.
I'm the doctor, psychologist, and behavioral expert.
This is the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab podcast.
We're high-performance coaches that help service-based professionals and entrepreneurs take their skills to the next level.
70% of entrepreneurs fail, which is why every week we have real talk with real entrepreneurs to help ensure you are not one of them.
We're also the inventors of the Be Rich mindset,
where we rise to mastery,
inspire greatness,
celebrate knowledge,
and help others along the way.
So join us in the lab.
And now, on to the show.
Welcome back to the lab. I'm JB.
I'm the doctor.
If you are a returning listener or viewer or even blog reader, thank you so much for joining us again. I'm going to go out there. I know for a fact you've already given us a 5-star review. You've followed us. You've subscribed. You've liked. You've shared us with your family and friends. I'm sure. Right, Doc? They've done all that already?
There's no doubt in my mind, and you don't want to make me a liar. So if you haven't done it, do it now so then I can say yes.
You can't make him a liar, folks. Look at that face. He's got enough working against him. All kidding aside, thanks for joining us again. If you're a new listener or viewer, you're in for a treat. Welcome to the lab. We have conversations with real professionals all the time around various topics that are meant to give you the insight and wisdom to level up and evolve to mastery. So super pumped to have you join us. If you found that you liked what you heard or saw, if you got something good out of this, we're going to ask you the same thing we asked our returning listeners. Give us that 5-star review. Give us a like, a follow, a subscribe. We want to reach more people. The best way we can do that and the fastest way we can have an impact is through your help. So thank you ahead of time.
Tell a friend.
Tell a friend. Speaking of ahead of time, we are fast approaching the end of the school year here for young kids. And if you're a little bit older, you got kids in that college age, they're probably done right about now. Welcome to summer.
Summer. So do you have any plans with your child over the summer?
Oh, good or bad, we have this summer super scheduled out for my kid. He's got coding camp, which is something that blows my mind that they have. And he's got fishing camp, and then he's just got regular summer camp. He is going to have the best summer ever. And of course, a ton of family coming in to welcome the newest addition of the family that'll be here soon. So we're pretty pumped about this summer. It's going to be a good one.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah, I was already busy. God knows what I'm going to do this summer. I get more bags under my eyes this summer, man.
So far, I figured out I have many beach trips I'm going to take and how many margaritas I'm going to drink.
The benefits of living by the beach in Southeast Florida, people. Not saying you want to move here, but not saying you don't either. It's a pretty nice area to live.
Happy and single, not having these little kids to worry about. I don't have to care about the school calendar other than less school zones and less traffic during that time.
That's a win, and a little less congestion, right? Less traffic. It's a little hot in the summers, but the beach ain't that bad as long as you don't mind bath water because the water's almost warmer.
It's South Florida, so just wait a few minutes; it'll rain.
Cool you right back down, right? No doubt.
And then
Doc, yeah, it's good for your skin. It really is. Coming from California, it's much better for your skin down here. So little tip for all you out there. I'm sure that's what you listened in for, skincare. All right, Doc, I am super pumped. We've got a really special guest joining us. We've got Dr. Toby Travis, who for the rest of this episode, it's happening. He's going by Dr. T. I like that. He's the upgraded version of Mr. T. That might be a reference lost on half our listeners, but that's okay.
I pity the fool that messes with him.
So at least you know it, Doc. Dr. T, you've got a lot going on. And rather than take any of your thunder and lightning, I want you to take ownership of this. Tell our listeners who you are, what you do, and just give us a little bit of insight really quick about what makes you so awesome.
Well, you don't need to talk to my wife and kids about what makes me awesome, I guess. But I can tell you what my passions are and what I enjoy doing and have had the pleasure and joy of helping many others. So I'm a school superintendent. I've been involved in education for many years. was a music teacher many years ago. And really my area of expertise is in leadership development, school culture, those types of things. But recently in the last year, had a book released called Trust Ed, The Bridge to School Improvement, that's been getting some attention in places like Forbes and the Knowledge Review and eSchool News. And this has opened up a lot of conversations with businesses and corporate sector and nonprofit sector, because a lot of what I'm dealing with in managing and trying to address in the school sector really does apply universally. And it's all around this element of trusted leadership. How do we assess it? How do we intentionally develop it? Because what we find is when we get the trust level right, there's a whole bunch of other great things that just happen. And in the corporate sector, I've got a friend of mine that works with Fortune 100 companies, and he'll tell you they see about 180% boost in returns when they focus on high levels of trust. I mean, there's actually an ROI that we can measure. In schools, we see higher levels of student achievement. We see greater retention rates, a critical element right now when we're in a national teacher shortage. Actually, that shortage has been around for years. It's just been exacerbated by the pandemic. And so when we look at retention rates, we look at community involvement and support, we look at volunteerism, all those metrics of school success or organizational success get better when we intentionally develop high levels of trusted leadership. And so my work has been involved in how do you assess it? How do you develop it? How do you maintain it? How do you protect it? How do you develop intentional strategic plans that are all around increasing the trust level of organizational leaders?
I'm absorbing all that, Dr. T. That's a lot.
Maybe that was too much. Sorry, Jimmy.
Mr. T never talked that much, but
Well, he wasn't an educator, so.
So I grew up with a family of educators, so I appreciate everything that you're doing. Both my grandparents, my aunt and my uncle, all educators in the New York public school system. My grandfather was a vice president or vice principal, excuse me, vice president equivalent, right? In this public school systems there. So really appreciative of what we see in the school system. I think the doc is as well. And I never want to take away from what he has to say. I'm curious, what was the impetus behind the book? So you've got this great career, you're doing a lot. Why'd you write the book in the first place?
Well, the why behind the book would actually have to back up to kind of the why because of my doctoral program. And even there, I have to back up to my experience in working as a teacher. I have to actually go back to my first teaching experience in a formal school setting. And I was absolutely devastated by the toxic work environment. Just what was kind of the assumed negative relationship between faculty and administration. And I'm like, whoa, this is not what I expected. I thought it was all about the kids. I thought it was all about the learning. And wow, there was definitely, different power structures going on. And then what happened, gentlemen, is I got tagged for leadership pretty early on in my ed career and transitioned then, to the other side of the fence. And it was like, all right, we've got to fix this. But getting your arms around it, and I'm a data guy. It's like, okay, how do I even assess this? So that was kind of what, led me then into my doctoral program. Like, okay, let's dig into this. And then, you go through that process and you end up with a dissertation that's this thick. And it's like, okay, what do I do with this now? How do you share this? And literally sitting at the dinner table, talking with my wife about it, she said, well, I was looking for a visual illustration. I was like, how do I help people? We know everyone's a visual learner. So how do we visualize all these complexities that we're talking about and what it takes to develop trusted leadership? And she goes, well, isn't it really, sweetie, just like a bridge? You've got to have all these components working together or it doesn't work. And I'm like, brilliant. And went back. Actually, I spent about 3 months studying bridge architecture just to see if the metaphor really did work, and it does. And so developed a framework for assessing and developing trusted leadership using the framework of a bridge, or that metaphor. And so that's what the book represents, is really a kind of a boiled down layman's view of the doctoral work, in understanding, okay, here is what the research shows us, what has to be in place. And then here are some tools for assessing it and developing action plans so we know what to do different on Monday because of this.
Let me ask, Dr. T, is there a difference, in kind of a clear and concise difference between trusted leadership and not, right? So just leadership versus trusted leadership.
Yeah, sure. And again, almost by every measure, and it's interesting when you would go in and you start looking at, okay, we're looking for correlations. Okay, so you get this outcome. Is there a tie to leadership? And Maxwell has said it for years. Everything rises and falls on leadership. He's absolutely right. And we have boatloads of research now to support that as well. And it really is kind of a duh, right? I mean, think about organizations that you've been a part of that have really been a joy to be a part of and have been effective at what they do. And then start talking about the leaders and what they did and how they did what they did. And in every setting I've been in, everyone does, it comes back to talking about the same types of competencies, skill sets. Trust is not just this ethereal soft skill. And I think that is often a problem with organizations that aren't spending enough attention assessing it and intentionally building plans around how to develop this in their leaders and their organizations. Is they just they're just assuming, well, either you have it or you don't. No. The ones that are most successful at this, they're constantly assessing it. They're constantly developing strategic plans for improving it. They're analyzing their practices, their protocols, their procedures all around this issue. And so, yeah, is there a difference? Oh, there's a huge difference, and the results are different as well. And that gets to be the exciting part, is when you see a school or organization that begins to understand this, and they start changing their culture of their work environment around this issue. And you get higher rates of innovation. You get deeper levels of engagement. I mean, just the payoffs are just really exciting, but it's really hard work. And it requires transparency. Jim Collins talks about, humility is key to what he calls level 5 leadership. You got to be mission driven. We all got to know where we're going, why we're going there, and passionate about it. But you've also got to be humble. And that means we're willing to look at ourselves in the mirror and let others assess us as well. So, long answer to your short question. Big difference.
It's a good answer though, and it's something struck me, and it shouldn't. I mean, it's par for the course with what I hear the doc talk about all the time, which is the 3 R's on how to manage and change behaviors, right, Doc? Maybe not. Maybe some internet issues with the doc there.
Are we having internet issues, or can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh. Yeah. 3 R's, definitely important to changing any kind of behavior. And I think that's what goes in concert to what Dr. T was saying. So if you haven't heard those 3 R's, make sure you go back to one of our previous podcast episodes that talk about behavioral change.
So you're going to leave me in suspense.
I know. I'm shocked here. He's always a man of few words.
Well, that's how you build audience participation. They have to go back and they have to listen.
He's the smarter one out of the two of us. I'm not going to lie. He's a pretty sharp guy. But it really is interesting, the behavioral modification. It's true with leadership, right? And you said it, right? You've got to constantly and continuously, you have to assess, you have to take a look at yourself. You've got to be objective, and you've got to be willing to be vulnerable and kind of maybe take an honest look at yourself, or maybe see yourself the way other people see you and not just the way you see yourself, to get a better feel for, am I stepping up? So I'm kind of curious. You mentioned within the book, you talk about how to assess and how to develop and how to maintain and how to protect. And it sounds like it's a cultural thing, right? This is not just with one person. This is about changing the culture of an organization. How can somebody quickly determine if they've got an issue with this? Are there any kind of red flags that a leader or somebody within a business can look at and say, okay, we might want to really take a careful look at this?
Well, there's pretty actually a large number, and usually it's pretty easy to self-assess that we've got an issue. In fact, the folks that reach out to me, I mean, they've already self-identified, either through like retention rates, right? They're
Mhm.
they're just going through people like crazy. People are not staying, and we've known in the corporate sector as well as in education, the number one reason people leave a job is because of a lack of support or perceived support of their administrator or their leader. So, I mean, that's a trust issue right there, and so I would say retention rates is often an initial flag. When you look at just any kind of job satisfaction surveys that are going on, if they're doing that or using those kind of tools, I mean, just their own internal metrics are often a flag. When you look at there was a major study done on discretionary energy. And that's everything from volunteerism to just, hey, I'm willing to put in some more time on this project because I love the project, right? You see higher levels of discretionary energy when there are high levels of trust. And so you see, no, my team is just clocking out when the clock is, whatever the hour is. So if the school day is done at 3:30 and the click, they're gone, and these halls are vacant, it's like, I'm not sure they're terribly. Now, I'm also all about protect boundaries, right? So I'm always saying to my team, family first, family first. So take care of your family. That's your highest priority. And if that means you got to get out of here at 3:30, go, and take care of the kids, take care of your spouse. But that discretionary level, you can tell when people are really engaged in the mission of what you're doing. And if they're not, that's a pretty good indicator. They're here for the job. They're not here because they're passionate about what the leader's trying to accomplish.
We see that across the board too, right? With productivity, with the amount of engagement, if they're doing any kind of customer service, how they relate to the people they're speaking to. So it goes so deep on how engaged someone is with the company, and it starts at the top. So if they have a leader that they believe in and someone that cares about them, then they care more about the business. And if they have one that's not engaged, then they're on Facebook all day.
Absolutely. Yeah. One of the things that we've learned, we talk about, I use the metaphor of the bearings of a suspension bridge. And a lot of folks aren't familiar with bearings. They think about it as, in a car, you got the bearings in your wheel, right? But the bearings of a suspension bridge, those are the moving parts of that bridge. And the analogy I use is to talk about leaders must be flexible. But what we've discovered is you do not have the ability to be flexible if you're not involved. And so there's these two elements of trusted leaders. Trusted leaders don't sit behind multiple doors of secretaries, right? They're accessible. They are on the floor of the plant or in the school. They are in the hallways. They're in the committee meetings. They're not some distant, remote admin office place. And then the ability to be flexible to meet the needs of your employees, to meet the needs of your stakeholders, to meet the needs of your clients. Well, that becomes more probable the more involved you are. So it's a principle of trusted leadership. And so then we look at, okay, how are we doing on that? What is our visibility? What does that look like? And what can we intentionally do? Is this, we've got to build things into our daily calendar that force us to get out of our office. We need to figure out how to get things off our plate that we don't necessarily need to be doing. So those are the kind of, we get down into strategic conversations about what do we do different then so that important principle actually gets lived out. That's that's the kind of work that I really enjoy doing is okay, how do we, if we know this is true, then so what do we do differently?
I have to imagine, Dr. T, that one of the bigger challenges leaders may have is kind of putting themselves in a position where they're working side by side and they're heavily involved, because a lot of times when you move into a leadership role, all of a sudden you kind of got like a big gulf between you and everybody else, right? There, it's known, okay, this is somebody who, yeah, in a lot of ways controls my destiny, right? This is an authority figure. This is not we're not necessarily on the same page. So I have to imagine that that's a stumbling block for a lot of leaders, and maybe you can shed a little bit of light on that. A, am I correct in my assumption here? And B, how do people overcome that?
Well, it can be, but it's all about everybody understanding what lane they're in and staying in their lane. That old principle of hire well and then support well. What kills trust is micromanagement. There's nothing that screams, I don't trust you, if I'm constantly checking up. Now, there are healthy benchmarks, there or what we often call thresholds, right? Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, here's this project. Go, run, do it. Let me know if you need help. But when you get to this point, let's circle back and reconnect. But in the meantime, I'm here to support you. Go. So that's a trusting. Non-trusting is, okay, I want a weekly or daily report. I need to see your KPIs every day. And literally, just kind of riding over the employee constantly. Then no. Hire a professional and then trust them to do their job. And if you don't trust them to do their job, hire somebody you trust.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
so simple, right? I mean, that's a simple concept.
Right.
Hiring and firing can be uncomfortable. Speaking from experience, it's a skill set that I've never been great at. I like to people please. I think naturally that's always been a tough one for me. But I love your point. I mean, it's a lot of times it's simple. That doesn't make it easy for people. On a whole nother note, we're talking in a lot of ways about established institutions and companies. If I'm building, right? If I'm building, how do I kind of try to create this up front? Are there some things I can do to really make sure I don't have to come find you once all these red flags are like, all the alarms are going off? Oh, I got a problem. Like, how do we build into this from the get-go?
Yeah, you don't necessarily need a specialist to help you do this. You just need to be reflective. And I would always say, and have others in on the kind of the review exercise. So one thing I'm thinking of specifically, so something I do for schools and organizations is I'll do a document review. So basically they will send me their policy manual, right? Or their employee handbook. And what I'm doing is I'm basically going through and looking at their protocols, their policies, their practices to see if anything is in there that is based on the assumption of, I don't trust my employees. So if you're building something new, right, just avoid going there. And what we've found is actually it is less expensive to run a company where there's high levels of trust, and both directions. I trust my employees, they trust me, right? And when you don't need to have all of these accountability practices and procedures in place, it actually is cheaper to run the program. Well, in organizations that are trying to figure out, okay, where did we go wrong? Well, typically where you went wrong is you had an employee who blew it, somebody who did something that was egregious or just was out of line. And so in order to address that, you tried to fix it through policy. You ended up punishing everybody because of the sins of the one, right? And it's like, no, it was a one-off situation. Deal with the one-off. No, sometimes, yeah, you do need to create a policy, but if the policy or the procedure is based on, I don't trust employees to do what is right, no, we've got a culture that we're creating kind of this adversarial role between leadership and an employee. No, I want to build a culture where, no, I assume my employees are going to do what they were hired to do, and I'm going to trust them. Now, are there evaluation tools that you're going to have? You're sure, and every place has that. But if you're starting from scratch, just always have that in your mind. What does this mean in my relationship of trust with my employees? And as you build that out, make sure that you're creating a structure for them to thrive with clear benchmarks, clear direction of where we're going, what we're trying to accomplish together. So if you weigh up, you're measuring what you're trying to produce, but you're providing as much autonomy, as much freedom for them to thrive in pursuing those goals together.
I would say this is even more important for smaller businesses than it is for the larger corporations. And I know we have a lot of service-based professionals and entrepreneurs that listen to our show, and they're going to be on the smaller end, right? Their businesses are going to be more compact. And what I'm hearing is even more important in their world, because you have less people to keep on your team and keep them motivated. So less people that you're counting on, but you're counting on them more. In a big corporation, if someone's unhappy and one person leaves, that's not a big shockwave. In a smaller business, if one person's upset and leaves, or it starts to get other people on that team, that can make a big, big difference for you. So this is the very important message for those small business owners.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Dr. T, I spent over a decade working with a Fortune 50 company that when I came on board had just bought out a smaller independent company. And so you saw culture shift happen in front of you. You were a part of it. And it was very interesting over time to see the influence of the new corporate culture. And I think you could see, through the lens of what you're talking about, you could see the shift in trust and leadership, and you could see it erode, right? You could see it, and not necessarily, erode's maybe not the right word. I almost use it like, when you see like that sheet of ice come off a glacier almost, right? When it hit, right, that it boom, and it crashes into the ocean. It's just like, oh, that's a big change all of a sudden. And in the financial services world where I come from, you deal with a lot of compliance, which I'm sure you're familiar with in your world as well. And a lot of times compliance is built around managing to the lowest common denominator, is the fun way of saying it. It's like, who's the stupidest decision maker we have that's going to be that person? And how do we protect ourselves from liability with that person? And okay, let's put all these policies in place to protect. And now all of a sudden you are creating an adversarial environment, not just for employees and leadership within the organization, but what about the clients they serve as well? Because you see that in the financial services industry, where now all of a sudden it's maybe this is in my client's best interest, but I'm not allowed to make it in my client's best interest because I have this policy in place to protect against some liability from leadership. So it's just really interesting to me, because everything that you're talking about, I can look back at, whether it's in my current world or my previous life and career, where I'm going, wow, yeah, I see it. And it's an unfortunate thing to have to see and go through. And it brings back memories, though. It brings back good memories of like when I first started in that corporate world, and I was like, wow, there's a great culture here. And then to see it go away, it's hard. So I guess I'm just saying, I really appreciate what you're saying and putting out there, having experienced it firsthand.
Well, JB, this is why we've got to protect it. And again, the best leaders that I've had the opportunity of rubbing shoulders with over the years, they get it. They understand that, no, this is the issue. And it doesn't matter what, whether it's, again, education, corporate, manufacturing, we all have a mission, right? We all have a product of some sort. But that is not the main thing. And I've got a mentor of mine who kept talking about keep the main thing the main thing. Where you say, well, what's the main thing? No, it's well-being. It's do we have a climate in which our people will flourish? Because when you have that, all the other things, it's like magic. It's like if you get the culture right. There's in education way they're saying culture eats curriculum every day, and it's true. If you get the classroom culture right, kids will just flourish. They'll just devour the curriculum. And you see, again, high levels of engagement. High levels of engagement results in high levels of achievement. Same thing in the corporate or manufacturing world. You create an environment in which people want to innovate, where they feel safe to contribute to creating some new practice or procedure. You're affirming people in their ability to be professionals and to pursue excellence. And that's people want to go to work there. They want to be a part of that. And so the main thing for leaders is ensuring you've got a culture and a climate that understands that employees are the highest value. In if I may, in the education sector, where I see struggling administrators and superintendents, well intended, but they really blow it, is when they they get the pecking order, if you will, out of line. So you see, student needs. We need to be student centered. Yes, if we're talking about instructional practices, we're talking about curriculum design. We've got to be focused on what do students need for their future. But when we're talking about the organizational management of the school, it's teachers first. Teachers first. Always has to be teachers first, because if you don't do that, if you put the needs of students or the wants of parents above the needs of teachers, you're killing morale, right? You're not valuing your employees. Value the employee. If teachers are well supported, and again, it's true in every sector, but as an example, when teachers are well supported, when they have the tools that they need, when they've got the resources they need, when they are challenged, there's also, we're continually growing, and they feel that they are trusted as professionals in their environment, we then see high levels of engaged students. So it's kind of this, if teachers are happy, students are happy. If students are happy, parents are happy. And if parents are happy, well, then we as administrators get to be happy. But you've got to keep it in that order. And same thing in the business world. Keep employees well supported, and clients are going to be happy because your employees are happy. And it really does work that way.
I think I see a lot of public companies get this wrong, Dr. T, in my experience, and I might be a little colored in my experience here because of my experience in the corporate world. But you get a lot of public companies that are driving towards quarterly goals, and it's shareholder first.
Yeah.
You could say consumer second, management third, and employee last.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, but I would put a guess out there that a lot of listeners who have worked for a publicly traded company feel very similar to what I just explained. And it's a massive cultural issue, and it's a massive issue with, I think, the way we measure corporate success, and it's a short-term gain for a long-term loss, in my opinion. And do you see the same thing in the corporate world? Am I alone in that? I would hope not, but.
Well, and again, it's the proverbial, you're shooting yourself in your foot. All of us, no matter what business or sector we're in, the most valuable part of our business or organization is the human resource. So value that, and you're going to see, whatever whether your product is education or your product is a widget, that widget's going to get better the more engaged and supported your widget makers are. So it is such a key, and you're true, and whether it's publicly traded or it's one of the biggest challenges in public education. There's such a call for accountability because of government funding, et cetera. Well intended. I'm not criticizing that idea. Yes, there needs to be levels of accountability, but we got to hire professionals and let them be professionals rather than technicians or babysitters. It's like, no, let's set the bar at a standard that like we see, as the most successful education systems around the world. You've got high expectations of teachers, but you also have huge autonomy given to those teachers to do their job, and they're trusted as professionals, and what they produce is amazing results.
So I have a little off topic, but I'd be remiss if I didn't go in this direction. Last week on our podcast, we had a great guest, Tracy Bissett, and we were talking a lot about education and the lack of education for business training and leadership in this school system. And having an educator here, I really want to get your thoughts on that and how you've changed some of that with this idea of how we're making sure that our students are learning about running a business and the importance of leadership in that, so that we can kind of get an insight that this has changed over, hopefully changing as we speak, even than it has in the past, of that importance.
Well, I think it is changing. I don't know that we can speak in the past tense yet, but I think it is changing. We've been watching, metrics in higher education, where you look at just compensation levels. You know, individuals that are going into a trade school, they're actually, their levels of compensation and their professions are, equal to those that are staying in to have to get a graduate degree before it makes a difference. So that whole idea of, you got to get your bachelor's degree to make more money. Well, it just isn't true. And really what the research shows now, or the studies show, is you have to at least completed a graduate program. The vast majority, I think it's like the 85 percentile of bachelor's degrees, 4-year degree graduates are not using their degree, in their employment. It's really just kind of a stepping stone. So there is a big focus on, okay, no, let's encourage kids and young adults to get into trades, get into specialties sooner, if our desire here is to ensure they've got a better and healthier financial future. So I think that is happening. So how are schools addressing that, though? That's still developing. I was just actually in a meeting with a gentleman that has started a new private school, I think about 9 years ago now, in the Raleigh-Durham area, and it's a boys' school, so it's a private school, but it's all on leadership, and so there is more flexibility, obviously, in the private sector to address those types of concerns than in the public sector. But I think you are seeing a lot more partnerships developing between community colleges and schools. The school that I currently administer, we have a fantastic relationship with the community college, and there are lots of pre-business type courses that avail the kids to, and able to actually get that completed even before they graduate high school. So I think the trend is there. I think it's happening, but always more can be done.
I would imagine that as we become more successful implementing, the trusted leadership from a top down, kids see that, right? Students see that and they experience it, and so just through almost osmosis, they're going to become better themselves when we have that structure built out better from the top down.
You hope. Well, yes, if they had it modeled well, that's true. So take a look at athletics. There's a rather embarrassing and frustrating study that came out about 4 years ago on character development in K-12 schools, or high schools specifically, in athletic programs. Kind of our common wisdom is, we do this football program or whatever, because it's going to build character in the kids. And the research actually showed us the exact opposite. And with a big exception. And so what we found was, no, actually in team sports, character development was not being built. And think about it. Look at the stands. Look at what goes on in the stands, right? Okay, is this building the kind of character we really want to have? So here was the exception, guys. Here's the good news, is it came down to the style of coaching. If the coach's focus was on developing athletes of character, then yes, that athletic program served as a vehicle to do that, and we can have some shining examples of it. But if the focus of the coach was simply the pennant, or to win the games, be top in the district, what we actually saw is character development was actually at a negative in those situations. These are not nice kids. These are not nice people. These are not people you want to be employing. And so, this idea of, we're going to build winners at all costs. Actually, no, that's a really bad idea. You want to build quality kids, quality young men, quality young women that you can trust in the workplace. Then your athletic program is going to pay off. And so it all comes back to keeping the main thing the main thing. And as we think about preparing students for their future, that is another area that I'm encouraged about, because we believe, I think one study I saw recently is probably 60% of future employment hasn't even been created yet. We don't even know what those jobs are. So what should we be doing is preparing students with transferable skills to any kind of employment. And so here we're talking about globally thinking, a collaborative worker, critical thinking. These should be what we're focusing on as the primary skill sets or competencies. And that I am encouraged. I see a lot of work happening there. I'll do a plug for Tony Wagner's book, Most Likely to Succeed. And that book actually, it's a great read for anyone in any sector, but it's talking about what should we be investing in youth today to prepare them for their future, not our past, and great thinking that's going on there.
Awesome. Speaking of preparing people, we heard you might have something interesting for our audience to take a look at. Would you like to share that with us?
Well, there's a number of things. So we have developed some self-assessment tools. Now, this isn't hard data. These are reflective tools, but I can share a link with you and your listeners. Partnered with a company called School Right, but there's also application here for non-education sector where you can do a self-assessment of your leadership, and using 6 components of trusted leadership, it will actually give you a score on where you're doing well, what needs improvement, and what may be really hurting your work. And that's also to introduce a 360 tool. The self-assessment's a free tool. You just need a link, jump in, and you can do it. The 360 is a paid service where employees are surveyed to provide answers to 48 research-based questions about their leader. And from there, we get some really great data to then inform some action planning and goal setting for the development of the leaders to make a difference. So that's one tool. Of course, the book, Trust Ed, is available on Amazon. You can find that pretty quickly. And again, it's called Trust Ed, The Bridge to School Improvement on Amazon. And you can find me at trustedconsulting.org and provide a variety of services to help primarily schools, but also organizations and a little bit in the corporate sector as well. And happy to help or direct you to others who can do the work that you may need in this area as well.
Of course, all those things will be found in the show notes below, or if you're watching on YouTube, some of that was scrolling on your screen.
Dr. T, I mean, I could probably talk to you for another hour or two around all this, if not a few days worth of conversation. It really covered a lot of ground and touched on some things I didn't expect to touch on. Really appreciated the insight that you provided with us here. Thank you so much for joining us in the lab. Very grateful to have you as a guest.
My pleasure. Thank you, gentlemen, for the opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
What an absolutely awesome conversation.
It was. I decided that I am going to start like my own super friends, and I'm going to collect all my doctors. And we have our, well-loved guest and friend, Dr. P, and now we have Dr. T, and I'm technically Dr. C. So we're going to start our own super friends, take over the world.
I'm not feeling left out at all. Like I joke, my credentials are legit. You don't just earn the JB. You got to put some effort in. And no, I did not say JD. I did say JB, just to be clear.
Well, I mean, the super friends have their sidekicks. Like they have their people that come in and offer some respite. So we'll definitely find a place for you.
You're lucky that this is a non-mature channel for the podcast and YouTube. You're very lucky. I might have some strong words for you the next time we meet up over a drink or something. I'm just letting you know. Be prepared. Be very prepared. You better bring your super friends.
Super friends will be with me.
All right. Top takeaway, Doc. What was your biggest takeaway?
Again, just the connection, and that's why I asked that question of like how education is so important and why. If you're listening last week, we talked about the idea of education not helping people get ready for business, and leadership is probably the most important things that you can if you're going to start a business and have any kind of employees, even if it's just one. Knowing how to motivate and get the most out of them helps your bottom line, helps the team energy, helps your sales, because these are the people that they're the front line for your business. The people that you work with are the front line because you're not there all the time. They are. And they represent you. And if they don't have that buy-in for you, they can do a lot of damage. So just the idea of starting from the top and setting that pace that everyone wants to promote you and actually loves you and the brand. That's, I think, the biggest, most important thing you can do for your business.
Yeah. That's a good one. There's a lot of takeaways here. I'm gonna key in on something that wasn't specifically stated, but for me is something that I think we all need to hear and be reminded of. I don't care what job you have, right? Whether you're in a career, a job, a business owner, a founder, I don't care what it is you specifically do. We can all, no matter our role, be professionals. And Dr. T didn't say that specifically, but he definitely spoke to it, right? We can all be professionals. And that to me is all about up here, Doc. It's all about mindset and how we go about carrying ourselves every day. And it is a great reminder for all of us that I don't care what you do or what somebody else does, they're either going to be a professional or they're not. And you, when you're working alongside them or they're coming into your lives, you got to hope and trust that they are professional. And there are always good ones out there, no matter what field or trade they're in. There are professionals out there. And that would be the power of networking, wouldn't it?
It would be. And you know where else you can find some amazing professionals?
Tell us, Doc.
Inside of our free Facebook group, the Entrepreneur Mastery Lab. And if you're watching on YouTube, the link's right there, or you can go right down to the show notes, or just go on Facebook groups, the Lab of Mastery, and you can find us. You can also find us on all our social media. Do you know where that is, JB?
At JB and the Doctor. You can find us pretty much anywhere. You Google it, you will find us. We are like everywhere. I'm actually quite impressed and quite scared. I'm not used to seeing myself all over. And yeah, by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, we've got a link down below for a freebie. If you're listening on the podcast, this will be in the show notes, but we've got 6 methods to ensure that your business doesn't fail. They're the 6 most common reasons businesses fail. I said another week that, hey, we might need to up that to 7, and now I feel like we need to up it to 8, because every time I speak to another professional, I'm like, oh my gosh, that is such an essential, and it's integral to success. So a great free download, check it out. And again, if you haven't liked, subscribed, or followed yet, go ahead and do so. Give us a 5-star review so we can help provide more insight and more wisdom to even more people and have a greater impact. That is what we're here for.
And feel free to reach out to us. We love to hear from you all. What your takeaways are, what your favorite parts are. You can reach us in Entrepreneur Mastery Lab. You can DM us on all our social media, or go right to our website and contact us at jbandthedoctor.com, where you can find this lovely podcast. Also our blog, our illustrious blog. So we can get you connected in any way you want, but we do love to hear from you. So holla.
All right, buddy. To all my friends and listeners out there, to all the viewers, good to see you. Thank you. I'm JB. I'm out.
I'm the Doctor. Peace out, yo.